This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to Linux Action Show, Season 31, Episode 9, Episode 309. Wow. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey there, Matt. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Hey, we're
in a new spot.
Something's different today.
I know. We are broadcasting from the new JB1 studios, and guess what? Big show today.
Big show.
We're going to talk about Ubuntu 14.04, the new LTS from Canonical, and we're going to give you our full action review. Are there storm clouds a-brewing just on the horizon? We'll tell you about that and give you our impressions of this new release. And then the news segment, we're going to talk about the new Cinnamon 2.2 that just shipped. TrueCrypt got audited to see if there's any code slipped in there.
Good.
And the Red Hat Summit just wrapped up, and we've got some highlights from that. And in the feedback segment, we'll talk about why the big show never really discusses or reviews AMD hardware.
Interesting.
Yeah, we've had some questions about that, and I felt like, yeah, we should probably discuss that. Plus, we'll update everybody on the new studio move and our Linux Fest Northwest plans, which kick off next weekend.
Yes.
Whoa, big show, Matt. But why don't we start with our Runs Linux this week? The Runs Linux is something you might have heard about, this lost flight.
Yep.
Yeah,
Good
this
stuff.
Flight 370. Well, guess
what?
what?
I've heard some people talking about that.
Now they've moved on to automated drones to search for the lost flight, and those drones run Linux.
Interesting.
Yeah, the Linux-based autonomous sub-lead Malaysia Airlines flight search drone, as a matter of fact.
That is probably not a big enough name.
Yeah, we've heard about it, like, going now past 40 days. We've all heard all about this flight. But so far, as of this recording, they haven't found a lot. But they're hoping that's going to change. Now, with these new devices, these new Linux-powered, autonomous, unmanned underwater vehicles called, there's two of them. The one we're going to talk about today is called Bluefin 21. That's its shorter name. That's a bit more digestible.
Yeah, I think so.
Bluefin 21 is now being used by the Australian search a vessel Ocean Shield under the guidance of UK-based Blue Water Recoveries to search a whole range of 1,400 miles west of Perth, Australia, and it does it like a lawnmower. It goes back and forth, back and forth.
Do you have to empty the bag when you're done, though? Because I think that's the question I want to know.
It could take more than 60 days for Bluefin 21 to completely search the area lawnmower style. I think they need to have like a whole bunch of these things.
Wouldn't that make more sense? Because you would accomplish more coverage.
Yeah, and it has a 2.8 mile depth range. That's how deep this Linux drone can go. It can navigate in a straight line for about 150 feet above the seafloor at 4.5 knots, but that speed is notched down to 2 or 3 knots when searching. The UAV uses side-scan sonar to build high-resolution 3D maps of the searched area. If it detects an object that might indicate wreckage, it can then switch over to camera mode. Right, and then it can take pictures within 15 feet.
And then probably send them back, I would think.
Yeah. Now, we don't have a lot of details about the Linux that it uses. Bluefin Robotics confirmed to Linux.com that, like their smaller Bluefin 9, the Bluefin 21 does run Linux, but no other real technical details came out, like the computer. They have some speculation in this article, though, if you're into that, including like they suspect it has Ethernet, 128 gigabyte solid-state drive, maybe a 4 gigabyte operating system drive and things like that.
It would be even cooler if it had little speakers on the side where it blasted Beatles songs back and forth. It was like sonar, and it was able to kind of get its bearings in its direction. You know, a little less GPS and a little more Beatles.
Wow, you're right. It is totally a yellow submarine.
That's right.
I didn't even catch that.
I caught that in the chat room. I was like, oh, that's clever.
You know, our chat room is really clever, Matt. In fact, I want to thank everybody for joining us today because it is Easter Sunday.
Yes.
It's 4/20. It's Easter Sunday. It is the first day we're broadcasting in the new studio.
People are driving on the wrong side of the road here.
And are you ready for the payoff?
Yes.
It's Hitler's birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
On 4/20 at that. That's boy. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a big day for us here in the JB1 studios, and kind of appropriate too. We're doing our 14.04 review at the same time. So before we jump into our picks this week, and I got some fun ones, I want to tell you about our first sponsor, and that is the awesome folks over at DigitalOcean.
Woo!
Now, what is DigitalOcean? DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Now, our users, they're a cut above the rest.
Oh, yes.
They have records at 47, 43, and 40 seconds to create a fully SSD-powered cloud server at DigitalOcean. Users, on average, can create a cloud server in about 55 seconds, and pricing plans start at only $5 per month for 512 megabytes of RAM. a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And what's awesome, that's all fixed costs. You know exactly what you're going to spend every single month. You know how much that droplet's going to cost you. And what I really love about DigitalOcean is they have some variety too. They have data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, and Amsterdam. Their interface is so simple, it's so intuitive, and power users can get access to replicate that interface to their own needs on a much larger scale using their really straightforward API. They have domain management, they have auto backup and snapshots, they have an HTML5 web console where you can actually see the BIOS of your virtual machine that boots up. They use KVM on the back end, and they use an HTML5 embedded console so you can watch it from post to all the way up to boot. You can deploy packages using Docker. They have two-factor authentication to keep it secure, and it's all based on SSDs, which makes a huge, huge difference. I've heard from folks in our audience who have been able to scale their infrastructure to numbers they never thought possible, at a density they never thought possible, because of the I/O throughput those SSD drives provide the server applications. If you're running a Minecraft server, if you're running a back-end infrastructure for a web app, if you're running an own cloud instance, DigitalOcean has got you covered. And when you use our promo code LASAPRIL, L-A-S-April, you will get a $10 credit to try out the $5 rig for 2 months. And one of the things that's really cool you can play with during that trial is there's projects that are associated with DigitalOcean. And one of them that's really cool is called Basin. And Basin allows you to manage your DigitalOcean droplets from iOS or Android.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yes, you can check on their status. You can reboot them. You get, their IP information. You get their available resources. You get red-green statuses, and it's really cool. And this is an example of there's a large community that's building up around DigitalOcean that, for example, if you just want peace of mind, isn't it nice to know that you could pull out your smartphone and on the quick menu, send a ping and just make sure, issue a quick backup. Issue a quick reboot from your smartphone. I think that's really powerful.
That's like, and you're in the middle of doing something fun. You're out with your friends. You don't have to go and open up a laptop or something. You can just bust out your phone. Boom, boom, boom. Done. Get back to having fun. I like that.
It's a nice setup. They got a lot of good stuff over DigitalOcean, and the system to create these droplets is so awesome. So go over to DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code LASAPRIL. See what I've been talking about. See why it's so great to be able to spin up a cloud server that you have root access to on a whole range of distributions with a whole range of scaling options that you can easily upscale in the future if you need to. It's a really awesome solution, and it's all using Linux technologies on the back end, some of which we're going to talk about later in today's show. So DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code LASAPRIL when you check out. It is so cool.
Oh, it's one of those things to where if you do anything on the web, you're crazy if you're not doing this. It's one of those things where I look at it and it's like, where was this?
And if you're stumped for like a way to take your skill set to the next level, if you're looking for something that you could do that gives you the full access of a server, you can have it on the public web so your friends and family can use it like an own cloud instance. But you will also want the ability to be able to snapshot and revert like you can in a virtual machine on your desktop. Well, DigitalOcean offers all of that. It
becomes
really
a great teaching tool, even self-teaching.
Yep.
Makes sense.
DigitalOcean.com, promo code LASAPRIL to get that $5 rig. Or just get a $10 credit and try the big boy. They got a whole range of devices. They even have hourly pricing if you're just doing some testing.
Nice. I love those guys. Yeah, good stuff.
Really cool. Okay, Matt. So why don't we start with our desktop pick this week?
Cool.
I got something that is going to bring a little variety into your life. And it's called Variety. And if you look at their website, I have no idea what this project does looking at this website.
Wow. It looks like a WordPress template, doesn't it?
I found this and I thought, oh, this must not be the right website. Because this isn't what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's like Variety. It looks like it's,
I have no idea, right? So what Variety is it is an application that allows you to have rotating backgrounds with text and quotes sort of interstitialed in. So if you look at my desktop right now in the video version, I got some sort of I don't know, rain dewy background.
It looks very zen and very...
I am zenning out a little bit,
yeah. It's definitely kind of chill.
And what's nice about this is this background, if you don't like this one, well, this background changes every 5 minutes, right? Oh. So, that is a user adjustable setting, and you're probably starting to grok what this software does now at this point. It allows you to have feeds from multiple sites on the web. And here, if you're watching the video version, I'll pull it up. So here's the little configurator.
Okay, cool.
You go into preferences here, and you can see I have multiple sources from which I can pull from, and I'm pulling from a whole bunch of them now, and I can move them around in priority depending on which one I want to pull from more. It saves them locally into a favorites folder. And so if it pulls down one I don't like, I can say, you know what, delete that from my favorites folder, and it'll automatically change to a new background.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. And you can actually, and you said you can actually customize the text that's then up here.
Yeah, like, so maybe you don't want a good quote, right? You can just say you can turn off show random quote, and now the quote goes away.
Like
it keeps
Abraham
the time.
Lincoln, I'm a vampire killer, or something like that. You can literally put whatever you want up there. That's
well,
cool.
yeah, and it lets you place it, so you can you choose all that. I'm doing the quote for a little bit, and it runs on any desktop environment, which is really nice. So it's called Variety. It saves all of them locally too. So then later on, after you've run it for a while, you have a good collection of backgrounds.
Oh, I'm definitely going to run that, because I think it's nice to have things that, I mean, not only as a reminder, but sometimes just as a psychological reminder.
Yeah,
I like that.
And what's great in Unity is all of the panels and stuff in Unity change when the background changes. So I kind of feel like I'm getting a new computer all the time. It's pretty neat.
That's really cool. Although if something ever happened to it, you're going to be very disappointed, because you'll be like, yeah. But I like the fact that it kind of morphs with your desktop.
Yeah,
very free feeling.
So the first time I tried it, Rotten Corpse in the chat room is asking right now. The first time I tried, he's like, well, can you say I don't want these? The way it does is it pulls down images, and then you just delete that image when you don't like it, and then it goes and pulls a new one. Yeah, and you can share it up on Facebook if you wanted to, or whatever, or view the source. So like here, I could say view the source, and it pulls up the source on Flickr where it pulled that image down from.
Oh, nice.
So that's Variety, and it is a random background changer. There's lots of sources. You could put your own sources in. You could put your own folder in if you wanted to. This kind of stuff's built into some desktop environments, but not others. This is sort of the great neutralizer. It works on all desktops.
Liking that.
It's called Variety, and you can find, well, just get the link in the show notes, because the URL is kind of crazy.
It's cray-cray.
So we're doing Ubuntu today.
Nice.
And I thought our weekly spotlight should probably be applicable to the larger than normal amount of, not that we don't normally have Ubuntu users watching, but we'll probably have more than normal watching today.
Oh, I think so.
So why not pick something that'll be relevant to those Ubuntu guys? And one of the sort of topics that has come up a lot between you and I recently is, how do you trust PPAs? Is the PPA system, is it crap?
Exactly, because there's not really a clear comment system when you're not actually at that page, and there's
other, there's like the OpenSUSE build service and the software gallery. There's the Arch user repo that kind of address this, but none of them are perfect either. No. So I wanted to point you guys over to an Ask Ubuntu thread that is, are PPAs safe to add to my system, and what are some red flags to watch out for? And there's some really great advice given out in this thread for what people should look for when they're adding a PPA to their system. And I'll just quickly summarize it. You guys can read the rest. Number one, this is the top answer. Number one, who made the PPA should be considered. Is it an official PPA from the Wine or LibreOffice project, for example? How many users have been using that PPA? For example, I have PPA from Wine headquarters in my personal PPA. Would you trust me with 10 users that confirm my PPA and 6 of them saying it sucks? So you take into account how many people have it. He says if it has thousands of users, that PPA is likely to be good, right? This work probably has several years behind it, etc.
Makes sense.
How updated the PPA is, and what gives you what information to look at to see how updated it is, and that gives you an idea if it's being maintained. And the rest of the thread goes through like types of PPAs you can get: the stable, semi-stable, bleeding edge PPAs, selectable PPAs. I've never said PP so much in like a 5-minute span.
Right, yeah, kind of that brings back fond childhood memories.
Yes, but great thread, and since PPAs are alive and well in 14.04 and appear to be alive and well for a long time, it's probably a good idea that we start figuring out, some common guidelines that we all kind of buy into and agree upon. And this thread over on the Ask Ubuntu Stack Exchange site was really good.
I think that was good. I would add one more thing that would stand out to me personally, and that is if you have a lot of comments from people that have very similar usernames, or they seem like they're like automatically generated. They seem a little too generic, like this was wonderful, this was great, I like this, this is awesome. Things that kind of stand out from that perspective. I've seen that before in other areas.
Yeah.
And so that's something to watch out for too. Might be kind of they could just be getting spammed, but at the same time, just being a little more wary.
So, one of the things I think to do a proper PPA is like you have to get into Launchpad. Like you have to be authorized, and I think they check it. And I've always thought, wouldn't it be cool if Canonical could graft on top of that a commented voting system similar to the AUR?
Because then you could drive that up or down as need be. Sure.
Yeah, and then since they all are in Launchpad, that would just be functionality that has to be added to Launchpad.
Exactly.
And maybe that would make PPAs a little easier to use. But in the meantime, we can use a little common sense. And if you're new to the concept of PPAs, you can follow this thread. Or even if you're not, it might be worth just going through and seeing if you agree with some of the assessments these people have made.
Yeah, I think that they really nailed it. I think they hit all the really important red flags. I would do like the idea of a voting system. I think that would probably prevent a big catastrophe that hopefully will never happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know.
But if it ever does, it'll be huge news.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a nightmare.
And then they'll have to do something.
They will have to do something, and maybe I don't know, not as serious of an issue. Maybe like someone making a point. Like something that just like does something odd to your desktop that's totally harmless to make a point. Maybe that's what it takes.
That'd be something kind of funny.
That would be kind of funny. I've seen stuff like that before.
Yeah. I'm getting a few ideas. They all involve phallical-looking things, but yes, I'm just getting a few ideas. All right, Matt, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com, Matt. Ting is mobile that makes sense, my mobile service provider and Matt's mobile service provider. And really, it should be yours too, because 98% of people would save money if they switched to Ting, and 100% of small businesses with more than 10 devices would save money. Let me tell you why. Here's how Ting works. No contracts, no early termination fees, and you only pay for what you use. It's a flat $6 a month. A flat $6 a month. That's right. And then it's just like taxes and your usage on top of that. Ting takes your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. They add them all up, whatever bucket you fall into at the end of the month, that's what you end up paying. It's really that simple. In fact, to just sort of illustrate it here, I was, when Rekai moved over, we were like, well, okay, let's look at our options. When we looked at some of these other cell phone providers, I plugged in Rekai's average usage here, and we're saving $1,800 over the span of 2 years by switching to Ting. And you can see what you would save too. You just plug in your information to their savings calculator, which is linked right at last.ting.com. Last.ting.com is where you want to go to let them know you appreciate them supporting the show, but it'll also save $25 off your first device, or if you already have a device you want to bring, guess what? Going to give you a $25 credit. It'll probably pay for your first month. So yeah, so here and that's all linked over at last.ting.com for the savings calculator. I plugged in this information, and it really gives you a sense of the long-term value you get by going to Ting. The other thing I like about Ting is they're pretty hip. They're pretty with it. Like they follow Android. Like they have these app picks. I love it. Like they're way better apps than I ever picked.
Oh,
Matt.
Definitely. They're well personable people, and they got great tips.
Why pay for mobile data when you can track down free Wi-Fi wherever you may roam? I'm Kyra, and this is Ting's App of the Week. Wi-Fi Finder is true to its name. It helps you find a Wi-Fi connection wherever you are so you can save on mobile data. When you first fire up the app, tap Wi-Fi Scanner and you'll see the networks listed and their proximity to you on the radar screen. Back on the launcher screen, tap Public Wi-Fi Near Me to see all the free and paid Wi-Fi hotspots that are nearby on a map. Tap any pin to get more detail on the location. Tap the info box and you can call, get directions to, favorite, or share a location. Wi-Fi Finder is especially handy if you're traveling out of the country and don't want to rack up roaming charges. Word to the wise, make sure you download the database of Wi-Fi hotspots so you can find a connection when you're offline. This is especially useful for tablets without a network connection. Just tap the settings button and choose Download Database. The database is over 50 megabytes, so you'll want to get connected to Wi-Fi before downloading the list of hotspots.
Ironic.
I'm Kyra, this is Ting's App of the Week, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, it is a little bit, right?
Make sure to subscribe to our channel.
Interesting.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking like, now, wait a minute. Why would Ting want to help me save on my data? Because that's just more money that Ting would make. I don't get it. That's actually the genius of the MVNO model, is Ting is able to focus on devices, plans, and customer service. And that dichotomy allows them to sort of put themselves out there and say, hey, you know what, you want to save money using us? Here's ways we're actually going to help you do that. But the other area they invest in is that customer service. If you call them anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern time, a real person will answer the phone. You can just call them at 1-855-TING-FTW. 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're listening to this show, like if this is Monday and you're listening to Linux Action Show, pause the show, give them a call, ask them your questions, and you'll be really impressed with how awesome their customer service is. They usually answer on the first ring, and of course, every Ting plan includes hotspot, tethering. When you turn those features on, it's just your data. You don't have to pay into some sort of special super duper plan. You just use it like you would because it's built into the technology. Ting sees themselves as part mobile ISP, and I'm totally on board with that. So go over to last.ting.com, and a huge thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. We wouldn't be here in JB1 if it wasn't for you guys, and also for our audience out there going to last.ting.com and thanking them for supporting.
That's right. Big deal. It's
huge
all
part
about
of why we're here. So we really thank Ting, and we thank all of you guys who support our sponsors. Last.ting.com.
Love you. Yep.
All right, Matt. So I want to start with something to ease folks' mind. We talked about it a couple of months ago. The TrueCrypt project launched an audit. They went through a third party to come in and look at the TrueCrypt code and see if any backdoors have been slipped in there, anything that would give people pause. Well, on Monday, after, it was 7 months. Jeez, it seems like it was just a few weeks ago.
Really? Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the first part of a 2-part audit is complete. The results, this is from a company called ISEC. The company was contracted to review the bootloader and the Windows kernel driver for any backdoor or related security issues. Okay. They concluded there is no evidence of backdoors or otherwise intentionally malicious code in the assessed areas.
Good.
While the team did find some minor vulnerabilities in the code itself, ISEC labeled them as appearing to be unintentional, introduced as the result of bugs, not malice.
So not only is it got some great bug reports filed that can be addressed and dealt with, which is awesome, but there's nothing scary and malicious. There's no creeping little monsters going to come get you.
Yep.
Cool.
This, in fact, this almost exactly, Matthew Green, he said, these results, they don't panic me. He's at the Johns Hopkins cryptography professor. He was one of the people leading this effort, and he told Ars Technica that he thinks the code quality is not as high as it should be, but on the other hand, nothing in there is really terrible, and so he finds that to be reassuring.
One thing I found is just generally speaking, Matthews tend to run liquid cooled, and we just don't get too excited about stuff. And clearly, this individual is well representing this.
It's really cool.
Cool.
So here's a little note from the actual report. It says overall, the source code for the bootloader and Windows kernel driver did not meet expected standards for secure code. This includes issues such as lack of comments, use of insecure or depreciated functions, inconsistent variable types, and so forth. Now, this is just for the Windows bootloader. The team also found potential weakness in the volume header integrity checks, so it's something they have bug reports on now. But they said overall, nothing seemed extremely important, but it's good to know about these things. And that, hey, if nothing super is critical, your data is probably safe if you're using TrueCrypt. Yeah, there's bugs, and if you're specifically using the whole boot encrypted solution for Windows, there's some actual bugs in that, but nothing that's intentional, and at worst case, probably not leaving you that insecure either. So that's really what you care about when you're using TrueCrypt.
I think that's good news all around.
Yep. All right, let's talk about something fun. Cinnamon 2.2 just came out, and this release was during the last week. And it's got some nice new features. I kind of want to throw it on a rig and kick it around and see what we think. But we'll start with some of the new fancy features that they've highlighted.
Cool.
Improvements to system setting. They've really cleaned it up so you no longer have to switch between advanced and simple mode, which I always thought was a bit of a hack. Now it's just one mode. It's not a little toggle option anymore.
Right.
High DPI support for like the Retina type displays.
Yeah.
Support for client-side decorations. We'll talk about that more in a second. And some other interesting refinements. The big thing I'm looking forward to is trying out the new system settings UI. I think that's a great improvement. You don't have to switch between normal and advanced anymore. They also, in Cinnamon 2.2, changed the way applets work. Each applet is now able to register roles, which tells Cinnamon which functionality they provide. And then you can use that to say, for example, if you have Network Manager, and you have the Network Manager in the tray, and then you have Network Manager as a desktop applet. Well, it could now be aware that you're duplicating functionality and turn off one if you're using it in one spot.
Oh, that makes complete sense.
So if you remove the network applet, you'll see the Network Manager GTK system icon disappear too, so they can be linked up. So you can have it like if you change status on the one on your desktop, it'll change status in the system tray. Nice. Nemo, the default file manager that's a fork of Nautilus, has also received some visual improvements, including high DPI support.
Really like that. I like the fact that they're addressing that because I think that was needed.
You can change window opacity now by using your mouse wheel on the title bar. That's kind of neat. So you can
that
make
is
them
very
fade
cool.
In and out.
Yeah.
Better integration with GNOME. If you have GNOME installed on the same machine, you're not going to have a conflict between GNOME Control Center and Cinnamon settings. Better systemd and logd support. Many other bug improvements. I want to talk about the client-side decorations.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So the client-side decorations are this thing that you see now in GNOME where you have that new header bar. You'll see it in the new gedit. You see it in files, right? It's this new. These are client-side decorations that are in one part a design choice, but they're also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, designed to make those applications Wayland ready. Because I believe when you switch over to Wayland, there's some issues there, and you need to have client-side decorations.
They're basically prepping ahead of time to be ready for that. Sure.
And a lot of GTK apps are getting on board with these client-side decorations because that's the mandate coming down from the GNOME project. Right. GNOME pretty much runs the GTK for the most part. Yeah. And so Cinnamon in 2.2 turned on these client-side decorations. Now, here's the problem, Matt, is take a look at this screenshot right here. What you have happening is you still end up getting the File, Edit, View, and Help menus, but now they're sandwiched between like the actual application toolbar and that client-side decoration, and you just have this huge, thick header.
Yeah, that does seem... Yeah, I mean,
because Cinnamon itself isn't really taking advantage of client-side decorations. It's just supporting them.
But here's the other side of it. I know people that have like say various visual impairments. So they're eyesight challenged or whatnot. And so for them, something like that, a nice large title bar, easy to find, all the functions at the top.
That could be good.
That is nice, but I think that should be an accessibility option and not set up that way by default.
And here's what it looks like. You can see on XFCE with a little more with a thinner theme. You can see you still have you have double close buttons.
Oh,
right?
Geez, that's messy.
And if you turn on minimize and gnome tweak, you'd have double minimize buttons. It's really meant to drop that top title bar. And look, the archive manager and archive manager don't line up. Look how jank that looks.
Yeah, it's incredibly redundant.
It looks.
I mean, it'll
really
work,
bad,
but it's not visually. It's pretty ghastly.
And so Martin, the Kwin developer, just put out a blog post addressing client-side decorations. I think I want to spin off client-side decorations into a future Linux Unplugged discussion because there is some legitimacy to them. There is an argument to be had to have them, and then there's a lot of arguments. We're looking at one right now to not have them.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely agree with that.
And as we move towards Wayland, for those of you not watching the video version, this is one of these types of bugs. I don't know if you want to call it a bug, but these are one of these types of evolutionary changes we're going to have to work out, and we kind of look like a bunch of noobs while we're in the process of the transition. Because I'm reading the chat room right now, they're like, man, that looks like shareware. That looks like an app from the 90s.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think the word janky really covers it.
Yeah. So, this isn't a Cinnamon problem. I mean, what's Cinnamon going to do? They have to support them, right?
Yeah, they do.
They're also promising a more traditional desktop paradigm, so they have to also offer your traditional file. Because in this,
isn't there an option? And I've seen this with other apps where you can basically like roll up to the default environment. So like basically so it would basically disappear like in XFCE.
Yeah, I think there is I think the developer of the application...
Chrome does that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's a great example. Chrome is a great example where the developers have made the application client-side decoration aware where you can turn them on or off.
Because that would solve the problem if it happened.
I think so. If that's possible, I think that would solve the problem. Now, this we're looking at here in the screenshot is File Roller. File Roller, the developer just hasn't implemented that or can't or whatever.
Yeah, right.
It's an awkward transition problem as we move between graphical environments and graphical display servers.
And I'm more forgiving as long as you're not preventing me from making it function. I'll forgive a lot of the visual niceties for a short period of time. Right. Or after a while, I'm going to be like, okay, come on, guys, really. but initially, I can forgive ugly. I can.
Yeah.
Put a bag on its head, buy it dinner,
I can still get my work done.
Yeah, we can get the work done with it. Yeah, like I said, just one day at a time. See what happens.
So, Red Hat Summit was this week. It ran from April 14th to April 17th. This was the 10th anniversary of Red Hat Summit, and I didn't go. I was busy moving the studio.
Yeah.
But I noticed from afar a really big trend coming out of Red Hat Summit, and I thought it embodied so much of what Red Hat's about. Here we are, 10th anniversary Red Hat Summit. Red Hat is now at the point where they have every excuse under the sun to become old, bloated, slow, out of touch, right? Like, don't they? Would you be surprised if that was the story?
Yeah.
So it's not. No, it's not.
No.
Awesome. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like you would expect.
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's
like
kind
you
of
would
like
think that.
And see, I was getting ready to be all disappointed and be like, oh my god.
I was too.
Oh my god.
No, in fact, I think this is a good sign. There's a lot of interesting stuff that came out, but one of the things that really came out was this massive embrace from Red Hat of Docker. They really recognized Docker as a huge advancement for server Linux. They really got on board with the Docker project. In fact, so much so that Docker was featured in several recaps from Red Hat on the event, and here was one that I liked the most. This is from Red Hat's recap day 2.
This year, for those of us at Docker, it's especially exciting just because of the great collaboration that we've had with Red Hat and the amount of activity that we're seeing. We actually just announced Docker's inclusion in the RHEL beta, which is very exciting to us. And of course, there was the Atomic news this morning as well, which also talked about Docker.
One of the great things that RHEL Atomic is going to bring is, like Paul talked about, is the portability of applications and the ability to just worry about the application that you're interested in. People hopefully will get weeks of their life back and not have to worry about something that happened outside of the scope that I'm interested in affecting my application and my productivity and efficiency.
Yeah, actually, it's been really fun being at the booth. I was here last night during the opening reception.
All right, I love that shot right there. That guy's walking around the hall carrying a beer.
That's a convention.
I wanted to stop it right there.
Yeah.
It's like, now that's a convention I should go to. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. You know, they featured Docker prominently in a lot of big keynotes. They had several keynotes, which is always weird because it doesn't seem like it's a keynote if there's a lot of them, but whatever. They had a huge presence on the floor, tons of energy. Then Red Hat sent out a separate filming crew to the Docker office, which check out all the plants this Docker office has, where they talked more about how Red Hat is contributing code to the Docker project to make it compatible with OpenStack.
Nice.
It was very gratifying to us that when Red Hat came to us, they didn't just come with a piece of paper.
We met with Brian, talked about the potential of working together. I think literally in a matter of weeks, there were engineers involved.
They came with developers and dove right in, which is the way that we work, and made huge contributions. And so as a result, we were able to make Docker work seamlessly with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and we've got really exciting things in the works with OpenShift and OpenStack as well.
So they're working with Red Hat to get them working on OpenStack and OpenShift, and Red Hat isn't obviously the only distro getting in on this game. Ubuntu also, as part of the 14.04 release, is all in on Docker. In fact, Docker had a post up on their site called Docker and Ubuntu, Ubuntu in Docker. We're excited to include the following guest post from, and this is from a Canonical employee writing on the Docker blog.
Oh, that's it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Dustin Kirkland. Nice. So they go on to talk about how they're incorporating Docker into Ubuntu 14.04 LTS. They even include the commands to get it installed and started, which is in the blog post, which is super nerdy and awesome. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but everybody's in on Docker, it seems like these days. And so it was taken notice by a writer, Alan Schimmel, I think is how you say his name. Schimmel? Schimmel. He wrote up a post saying that, you know, Docker is taking the container space by absolute storm in Linux. He says it's now the de facto standard. He said a lot of the buzz around containerization in general, and it's really around Docker in particular. Docker is set to ship with the latest version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7.0. Also, Docker will integrate with Red Hat's OpenShift platform as a service. This is in addition to the earlier announcement that Red Hat is launching a certification of applications delivered in Docker containers.
Wow.
Besides Red Hat, Docker is already ran on Amazon AWS. It runs on DigitalOcean, as well as several Linux distributions. And sources tell him that we can expect to see more announcements in the weeks ahead about Docker being included by default in several other major Linux distros.
Wow.
Docker is becoming synonymous with containers in Linux. By the time any other project or competitor look up, they will have this one sewn up. Docker now owns the container market.
So it really, you know, it seems like that, you know, while there are other solutions out there, a couple of people in the chat room pointed them out. I think it's important to realize that it's marketing law first. And I don't mean first to come out. I mean first to seize, first to actually own a space
and market, and that plays into market adoption. Like you know, all of it. I mean, Docker's had some good buzz going from day one.
Yeah, and they owned it. So I mean, regardless of who peed and who's Cheerios or who's better or whatever, the point is that this is what is. So.
They talk a little bit too. Docker is working on like commercial hosting of like some Docker containers. They're working on different angles to make some money at it. They're not going to like commercialize Docker itself, but they might commercialize platforms and services around Docker. It's growing so fast that like people are throwing money at them. So they haven't really solved that part of the problem yet. But it's pretty crazy, and it's something we've been following pretty much since day one.
Definitely. Well, I always found it interesting because a lot of times when something like this happens, someone that's a fan of another product that's similar to it, they're saying, well, they're borrowing from this or taking away from that and whatever.
Right.
And my response to that is, it doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't. I mean,
pretty much how software works.
I mean, it's just it at the end of the day, the belief in that doesn't change anything. So it's just kind of like, this is where we're at.
Right.
So,
and if that was the case, so many software projects out there would never have gotten wide adoption. It's just
it's like, it's
the way it works.
Put your focus on what you're passionate about and move on.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy.
All right, Matt. Well, that's all the news for this week. It's time for us to review Ubuntu 14.04. I have been waiting for weeks to talk to you guys about this release, but first, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System 76 creators of machines born to run Ubuntu. Matt and I are fortunate enough. We have 2 brand new System 76 models in front of us. They sent them up here for Linux Fest Northwest. That way we'd have some additional rigs for next weekend. But we're like, would you mind sending them a week early?
Yeah. I'd even like to hold on to them for like a couple of weeks or maybe 3 or 4
and
months. Or, you know.
So I've got the Ultra Pro I've been running Ubuntu 14.04 on, and Matt has the brand new Bonobo Extreme.
Oh, yeah.
System 76 has a lot of really great rigs. And this is what's so great about buying from System 76 is they are all in when it comes to new releases. Like, some of the other vendors who quote-unquote sell Linux machines, they'll be like, yeah, could you just keep on 12.04 for a few more months until we've made sure we've worked all the kinks out? Don't update or else you won't get support. And like System 76 sent out emails day of.
Right.
They have a new page up that explains some of the great features and benefits of the new release of Ubuntu. All of the new models, if you buy them today, ship with 14.04 ready to go. So go check them out over at system76.com. Look at the Ultra Pro. I'll tell you what. This thing is a killer Ubuntu machine. I'll tell you more about that later in the review. Or grab the Bonobo if you want the ultimate portable gaming experience. This is such a great rig.
It'll run it all.
System76.com. And thanks you guys very much for sponsoring this segment. And thanks very much for sending us these rigs to trial. They'll be they'll come in very handy at Linux Fest Northwest next weekend. We were a little short on equipment last year. So this year.
This is going to be great. Yeah, I came rolling in with this hurting little netbook thing. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was, and then we had various jokes about that, and yeah, we just kind of went on from there.
So this week, Ubuntu 14.04 shipped. It's a 5-year support for the Ubuntu desktop, Ubuntu server, Ubuntu core, Kubuntu, Edge Ubuntu.
Wow. That's
new. All flavors are supported for 3 years, all additional flavors. Ships with kernel 3.13. It has a lot of new features throughout, and I want to show you some of my favorite ones. I thought maybe we'd start with that.
Okay.
This is the first release of Ubuntu that we've seen in a while where they've pulled out Ubuntu 1. So that's kind of a big difference.
Right.
And the other big change they've made is the way they handle menu bars. And I think that's where I want to start. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And here's how you turn this on. This is one of the first things you'll need to do is when you go into your system settings, and then you'll want to go into appearance, and then you'll want to go into behavior. And on this tab, first thing you'll probably want to do is enable workspaces, because by default, Ubuntu 14.04 does not have multiple virtual workspaces. Most Linux users, they want that. Most Windows switchers don't even have any idea what that is.
This is true. This is true.
And the other thing you might want to look at changing is show the menus for a window. And you have 2 options, in the menu bar or in the Windows title bar. Now, in the menu bar is sort of the way it's always been, the global menus, the way the Mac does it, where they're up here in the top. In the Windows title bar, actually moves those things to the actual title bar of the application. So like if I open up my file browser here, you'll see my file, edit, and view are now all in this title bar instead of up here. So now each window, once again, has its own menus with it.
And I kind of like that option myself.
It's a good compromise.
Yeah.
It's a really good compromise. And so I turned it on, and I've been using it for the entirety of the review. And I've been pretty happy with it. So that's probably out of the gate one of the first things you'll want to do. Now, I want to talk with the stuff that I don't like, and then I want to talk about the stuff I do like and kind of see what you think about some of these things.
Cool.
Why don't I start with, so it's overall a very, like some of the basics.
Sure.
Performs great. It really does perform
I was
really
blown away. I was like, oh, hey, this is nice.
Yeah, but here's the thing that I'm not a huge fan of.
Okay.
Is I'm starting to feel like the default look of Ubuntu is claustrophobically old. Like it
feels tired. I would say tired is the word I would use.
I feel trapped in this weird box when I'm using this desktop. Like the top bar looks like GTK2. It's the menus look awful. And these are all things that perhaps don't drive other people crazy, but to me, this stock look of the Ubuntu desktop is unfortunately very dated now. And that's a little bit disappointing in a 14.04 release that's going to be around for 5 years, because we're going to have this dated look for the next 5 years.
Yeah. But I would shoot back with looking at the fact that this particular release is based. Whoa, hello.
Hi there.
Was based on stability more so than trying to push the envelope. So I'll forgive it for now. But I do agree that the brownness has never really gone away.
Yeah.
It definitely feels.
And so what I did to quickly change that ship around is I installed Numix. Right. So now I have the Numix theme installed,
which is gorgeous.
Yeah, and I installed Unity Tweak, which I would recommend everybody get, because then you can adjust some of these things a little more. Once you have Unity Tweak and once you have Numix installed, to my mind, this felt as absolutely as modern now as a GNOME 3 desktop. And I think part of the reason why it stands out so strongly to me that it is it feels so old, it feels so dated, is because the Unity dashboard itself feels very modern, feels very clean. It needs
colors to pop, and I think that's what this theming does for it, is that it allows it to really accent its benefits.
Also, browsing applications installed is a massive chore.
Sure.
It is unexcusably cumbersome, and I wonder why they couldn't have pulled in a few features that like GNOME 3 has, where you can make folders in here. Like it'd be nice if I could maybe group some of these things together to make application browsing a little bit easier. Because right now,
if you don't know the name of it or what it, or even that sort of thing, you have to basically
just a huge list.
Yeah, you have to go through it, and that's a little much. I'm hopeful that in a future release that maybe they will pick up on that when they're ready to do some new features.
I'm not interested in scope filters. That's like the last thing that I never want to open up my launcher and then have to set up a set of filters. Just let me group some icons together and I'm happy.
Just drag, drop,
totally
drop,
fine
done.
with that.
Yep.
So that's a couple of things just about the UI that bugged me, but here's a couple of neat things.
Okay.
So one of the advantages to using this Ultra Pro laptop is that I'm getting Intel graphics,
which is definitely a benefit.
That means I get to play with Mir. Now, I don't know if it'll work with the video mirroring, so I'll try it towards the end of the review just in case it breaks everything.
Sure.
But it does also mean that, and I'll have links in the show notes, with a few commands, you can also try out the new Ubuntu Touch apps right here on the 14.04 desktop.
Oh, wow.
So this is the gallery app that is on Ubuntu Touch. Now, these are not optimized for desktop. These are the Touch versions. But it is fun from a technology enthusiast standpoint to play with these applications and see where they're going with them. So and these are frequently updated, these PPAs. So
we're acknowledging the fact that this is not designed for this layout.
But it's fun to see,
but it's
right?
Fun to cool, play with,
and like it's neat to know that as I keep these PPAs, I will see the new versions of these applications turn up, and I get to see where they're at. So this is the gallery application. Another one I pulled out is the calendar application.
Just the fact that it runs at all on a something that's not touch is really cool.
Yeah, it's usable, and it's fun to just sort of experiment. It's like 14.04 itself feels very modern for today, but I can already see it showing signs of age. For me personally, like Upstart is feeling a little old now.
Right. No, I definitely think but I think that honestly, for a lot of people, if you get that themed Numix, obviously, and go that route, I think you could end up being very, very happy with the experience overall, because you do end up with a very stable experience. I was overall quite happy with it. It's not, I wouldn't say it was flawless by any stretch. There were a couple things that I'll bring up here a little later that I found, but overall, you tweak it out a little bit, it'd be okay. But I really wish they'd refresh the look. That would be cool.
And I do want to also touch on the Software Center. I wasn't expecting a lot with the Software Center for this.
Expecting something. Yeah,
I know it's just not their focus anymore. Yeah, but the problem is
it's really bad.
Ubuntu is a victim of its own success in the sense that it's kind of the go-to platform right now.
Right.
If you're gonna get desktop Linux, especially if you're gonna run Steam. And unfortunately, the Steam installation process through the Ubuntu Software Center is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It epitomizes everything that is wrong with the Ubuntu Software Center. So to begin with, when you find Steam in there, now initially there was a bug. They have fixed this bug. There was 2 entries.
Okay.
When you find Steam and you install it, and it, to me, I was sort of shocked that it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, it's just kind of like, oh,
why is it not featured? This seems like one of the most important games for this platform.
Yeah.
Why
do
you not
anything featured for that matter? I mean, geez.
Chromium's in here too, but you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it. So we'll go search for Steam. Like that to me just seems like a no-brainer.
Well, and it's featuring stuff no one cares. I mean, really, come on.
So there's 2 entries for Steam, and I don't know why that is. I can't quite figure that out. But one is the one that actually works. Now here's the problem: if this wasn't installed yet, that button right there wouldn't say install. That button would say buy.
Oh my
And then when you buy that, when you click buy, it actually begins to treat it like a transaction.
Right.
You have to have an Ubuntu One account. Now wait a minute. I thought Ubuntu One was shutting down. I don't understand.
Exactly.
That's a weird messaging thing, right? So why am I buying Steam? Remember, I'm thinking of this as a user who's switching to the platform. Why am I paying for Steam? Why do I have to buy Steam?
You're Joe Average. You're confused at this point.
Yeah. Why am I buying Steam with a service that I just read was being shut down and was pulled out of 14.04? So it's confusing messaging throughout. You have to have an account with Ubuntu One, with the Software Center, to download and install Steam through their recommended source, and then you get an email confirmation, thanks for your purchase of Steam.
Yeah.
Like the entire thing is a clown show, and it is probably the most important application that Ubuntu has ever shipped in their software center, and the entire process is cocked up. And it is not user-friendly. And the reason why I'm kind of upset about this is we had our buddy Chase over.
I remember this, and oh my goodness.
And we were like, hey, Chase, check out Linux. This is the new Ubuntu. So what's the first thing Chase tries to do is install Steam.
And I felt embarrassed, and I think you felt embarrassed.
It was very embarrassing to see. To him, that was probably the least polished.
Right.
He walked away from that thinking it was amateur hour.
Yeah.
And I can only see.
I like Clown Show.
Yeah, I can see thousands of other users trying out Ubuntu because a new release has come out. This is the one that Valve says is a great distro to use, so they grab it and they go through this process. Now, some of them are going to download the deb directly.
Right.
And then when you double-click the deb, if you download it directly from the Steam website and try to run it, Software Center then launches and completely screws up. It will not complete the installation of the Steam deb that you download from the Steam website. So if you download it from their site, you get a bad experience. If you try to install it through the store, you get a bad experience.
Exactly.
And this, to me, cannot... I mean, how did it ship like this?
So here, and I'm going to backstory this because I get it, but at the same time, I can't forgive it, and I'm going to explain why. I understand that this release is for bug fixing and just kind of, it's polish. Now, I think what happened is the Ubuntu team filed this under features. Okay, that was a mistake. This isn't a feature, guys. This entire experience is a bug that needed to be fixed in this release, not the next one. And now I'm going to give you guys a pass. For the love of Pete, please, seriously, get this fixed by next release. I can't. Otherwise,
But see, the problem is now it is in a 5-year release, and all the future releases are going to be a whole bag of change. And like we're all going to be telling people for years now, oh yeah, use the LTS. That's going to be the go-to line for Ubuntu now, and that's going to be a problem in there. And the reason why I harp on this is because I know, chat room, I know they're telling me right now, not everybody cares about Steam, Chris. I know that. But
it's symbolic as far as the way you do other things.
Exactly. It is speaking to a larger problem, and it happens to be an extremely critical application.
It ends up in news articles. It ends up on podcasts. So my solution to this is a simple one. Is that I honestly think that by their .1, get this fixed, because seriously, not only are you going to make less work for yourselves in the long run, you're going to have better PR. It's just going to be it's going to be sunshine and roses across the board, because the Software Center is important. But it's not. But it's incredibly janky right now.
Yeah, I would say the Software Center is now at the category of literally the first thing I do when I get a new Ubuntu install up is take every step I can to never use the Software Center. I install Synaptic, I install gdeb, so that way I can actually install debs I download. I use apt-get. I will run the updater. Thank God the updater is separated from the Ubuntu Software Center.
Great.
What a catastrophe that would be if the two were integrated. Thank God they never got that far. So the store to me is a huge joke, and I think it's such a shame because they were like one of the first to have one.
Well, it was a source of discovery, and I take issue with first to have it. That's I mean, if you want to ignore CNR and Linspire and all that, I suppose. But and the fact that they hired the guys that created CNR.
That's a good point.
But anyway, that being aside, they had the potential to do this right. They've had enough time to where it's like, I'm going to assume that there's a back end reason why they haven't done this. Maybe there's some a mirror situation or some sort of a back end thing.
It's just focus, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand what the reasoning is that this isn't deemed as important, because honestly, that's like packaging and software that's the whole reason why people use debs. I mean, it's kind of a
and one of the things we like about Ubuntu is that it's a fairly clean, tight installation. There's not a whole bunch of applications you don't need, but the flip side of that means I'm pretty much initially one of my first experiences when I use Ubuntu is I need to install software.
Right.
So it's like here's your welcome screen. Now go try out Ubuntu Software Center,
which
and
would
it's
be
immediate
fine.
disappointment.
Yeah, and which would be fine if it was working correctly. Now here's the problem. I like Ubuntu. I like the direction they're going. I like what they've done. I'm a fan. But I'm concerned because I think that they're giving people the wrong impression. They're feeding a problem, making it worse. And if they don't address this quickly, it's just going to continue to grate down on them. They'll survive it, but it doesn't help.
Yeah. All right. So that's the heavy stuff.
Yeah, that's the heavy stuff.
I wanted to say, coming into this review a couple of weeks ago, because I've been running it for a few weeks now, I thought I kind of drug my feet initially because I thought, I've been using Arch for 8-9 months. Right. I'm a jaded Arch user now. Yeah. There's no way this silly Ubuntu is going to impress me. Right. I'm going to be disappointed for the 3 weeks that I'm running this thing. And I'm actually pretty happy to say my experience was completely 180 degrees the opposite.
Yeah.
Ubuntu 14.04 impresses, and I could easily see myself switching to this desktop.
I could
easily.
too. The only thing that I found was outside of there's some issue with one AMD driver. I don't know. The proprietary wasn't being detected. Outside of that, I found it to be stable. I was able to navigate easily. Everything was very responsive. The installation process, I love the fact that, and I think this is probably old hat, but it's been a while since I've used Ubuntu.
Good installer.
Good installer.
Yep.
I loved it. It said, hey, you're using Arch. Do you want us to just go ahead and throw that alongside of it?
Yeah.
Little niceties like that are very pleasant.
And it'll also detect a previous Ubuntu installation and say, yo, dog, I see you like Ubuntu. Would you like me to remove all of your Ubuntu but keep your applications and settings and just give you a new Ubuntu?
Which is like that. I like that. That's why, yes, I would. That's wonderful. So I definitely color myself, despite my negative criticisms, an Ubuntu fan, and I'm holding out hope that they continue to do awesome things like this.
The other thing I've noticed, and it's really hard to quantify this in a review, but you know, in the 3 weeks that I've been running this, you feel the presence of the larger community. You can tell it is a more widely adopted desktop operating system because every guide, every news article is talking about a piece of software has the here's how you do it in Ubuntu, right? Everything. You want something crazy, you can get it in Ubuntu. You might have to go through a few PPAs and a few hoops, but it's there. The support infrastructure from the community is there. And that's hard to quantify because Arch has a great community. Arch has an amazing wiki. Arch has all of these things, but there's something different about just a massive install base. And I think when you're recommending Linux to a new user, you really cannot undersell that, because when they're going out there and doing those random Google searches, they're trying to answer a question, the wide reach of the Ubuntu community really pays off.
Oh, I
feel like you're running a tier 1 supported operating system.
Definitely so, and they definitely have embraced things like, and this is not new, of course, but this is something they continue to do. They embrace social. Everything feels very unified. I feel very
your Twitter
happy.
feed coming in. You got your Google Docs integrated. That is nice too.
You know, the overall flow. I don't feel like I'm using something that's janky or buggy. It feels very stable. It feels very smooth. I love the fact that I have control over where I put things.
Yeah, the snapping. All of the Unity stuff is feeling very refined.
Right. Unity is definitely growing on me, I gotta admit.
And I like that I can tweak some of the settings, like the icon sizes that I wasn't able to change before.
Dual desktop. Okay, this just blew my mind. All right, I run the installer. I got dual desktop set up on my computer. I didn't even think. Usually, I unplug a monitor or expect it to like clone the screens or whatever. Nah, it's got me dual desktop out of the box.
Yeah,
it had it arranged. It was proper, and everything was perfect.
It's legit now too. Like you can choose like what monitor does my launcher show up on? Show up on all the monitors. Do I want edge stickiness or not? Like I was using it a lot in dual monitor configuration.
It was very, very responsive. I was
very
very happy with that.
I really like their monitor. Their display configurator is a little bit different than all of the other ones because they've forked it or something, and it is just right. And when you combine it with Intel graphics, it's pretty much. Well, it is flawless. I mean, that their display management with the Intel graphics is totally flawless. One thing I wanted to say is we've been talking a lot about the desktop.
Yes.
My prediction is today, 14.04 is a great desktop for the next 3 or 6 months, and then it's going to really start feeling old.
You think?
I think so.
Okay.
But I think on the cloud side, I think this is one of the most serious competitive releases of any Linux distribution for server-side operations we have ever seen. And let me tell you why. Out of the box, 3.13 kernel, which is fairly modern for an enterprise distro. Yeah, I've got 3.15 or whatever it is, or 3.14 on my Arch box, but 3.13, pretty recent for an enterprise level distro. So I think that's a big deal. Built-in Docker support. 14.04 has built-in Docker support. Huge for cloud installations.
Oh, big time. Big time.
And last but not least, I think, is Btrfs.
Oh, yeah.
Out of the box now, these boxes are installed with the Btrfs file system flawlessly. There's a little bit extra time at boot up where it scans Btrfs.
Chris loves his butter.
I do. And I think the Btrfs combined with Docker is this amazing winning combo. The only piece of that trifecta they're missing is systemd, and they're working on replacing that.
And so, and that's awesome. For me personally...
Or adding that, I should say.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think for me personally, I could see this being a slam dunk if they, the .1, because I do not want to wait an entire 5-year, or for the next long-term release or even the next release before that. If they do a .1 where they address this software center stuff, it is absolutely, I could recommend it to so many people. Like, I mean, even more so than I do already, because then I'm no longer getting the calls.
It's not, well, it's
what's
not,
going
you
on
don't,
with
you don't have to have that caveat. It's a great desktop, but you probably want to avoid the main way you're supposed to install software.
Because it's a source of discovery. I mean, that's the whole benefit of an app store, is that it's a software discovery center. You're able to take recommendations and whatnot. And generally speaking, it works well enough. But there are enough instances, such as with Steam, that, to where you're buying something for free because it's proprietary. What the hell? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, why do I have to create an account? Why do I have to give you my shipping information so I can download Steam?
And then to tie it in with a service that's going to be put to death anyway. So, it doesn't really make any sense. I think if they address that, absolutely a slam dunk.
Yeah.
They still have an opportunity to. I'm looking at you guys. Please heed me on this. I'm telling you, you're doing yourselves a favor, and you're doing me a favor.
So, what's funny is Ubuntu 14.04 is a distribution that is sort of standing on the edge.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what's going to come next.
Not a clue.
Last night, before the show, I jumped into the Ubuntu development mailing list, and I'm reading the threads in there. And, they're talking about, okay, well, now that we've got 14.04 out, let's talk about convergence. Like, how are we actually going to pull off convergence for the desktop? Are we going to rewrite all of the core applications? And they listed out 8 or 9 really core applications, everything from the file manager, web browser, terminal, gedit, file roller, right? Like all of this stuff. Are we going to rewrite all of this? Are we going to extend the existing applications for mobile? How are we going to do all of this? And the future versions of Ubuntu will not be like this Ubuntu. This is an Ubuntu of the past, but it is like the best refinement of that Ubuntu. Like this 14.04 is a send-off to what was best of old Ubuntu on the old desktop.
Bon voyage, if you will. Yeah. And it buys them that 5 years to, for a long-term release to begin building up these other new things.
Right. And now we're going to start seeing new applications rewritten in Qt, showing up on the desktop. And, you'll see ways people will be able to get those PPAs on their system and try them out. It's the future of Ubuntu is, I think, completely unpredictable on the desktop at this point. So I'm glad they got a really great release out, and I'm even more glad that they got a really good competitive server distro out, because it gives SUSE Enterprise Linux, it gives Red Hat Enterprise Linux a little bit of a run for their money, keeps that area really competitive, keeps revenue coming in for Canonical, because that's a good moneymaker for Canonical, and it gives us a great desktop for long-term support users. For me, myself, I already can tell you that, I put Numix on here. I got rid of the theme that I once loved. I used to love the Ubuntu
I remember that.
theme.
Yep.
Yeah, but you know what now? It's really of a bygone era. It is a theme from an era that they really need to address that. But once you get Numix on there and you load up your software, it feels pretty good. And I feel like I could run this for a while. 3 to 6 months, though, I'm starting to feel a little old, I think.
So here's an idea for the whole theming situation. Okay, you do Numix by default. You keep the old theme call it nostalgic, and throw that as an option. Yeah. Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, you could. I mean, why not, right?
If I was releasing this myself, if I was the Ubuntu team, that's one option. I honestly think they should really consider that, because, boy, what a breath of fresh air that would be.
So Donnie Zayn in our subreddit, he wrote in a question, he said, do any of you plan to switch from other distributions to Ubuntu 14.04 LTS? He says, I'm thinking about making the switch from a Fedora 20 KDE to Ubuntu 14.04 and stick with that for a really long time. And I thought,
I do it just based on packaging.
I thought, we're going to get a whole bunch of comments and everybody's going to scoff.
Right.
No, actually, there's 54 comments in this thread. And yeah, of course, there's some no's.
Sure, of course. Well, that'd be natural.
Yeah, there are a ton of yeses. A ton of yeses. Yes, I just switched from Fedora 20. Like, you go through this list, a ton of people are switching to this release, and I think that is a huge sign that they have a massive hit on their hands, that people are identifying, and it's fast, it's stable, it's modern enough, and it has wide industry support. It's really sitting in the super sweet spot right now, and I have ran it on an entire range of devices, and every category of device, it has been extremely performant.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's the important piece of it, is that, out of the box, it's a great experience. There really is no question about it. A couple of areas to where it can use a little TLC.
All right,
but for the most part, it's awesome.
Before we wrap the review, I don't know if this will work since I have a guest session logged in too. I'm going to try logging out and logging into Unity 8 and Mir.
So we're basically trying a Mir experience versus what you were using previously, which would have been X.
And I don't know if I can, since I have a guest session 2 started. So I'll go log out the. Oh, there it goes. There it goes.
Okay.
And I have, by the way, in the show notes linked, I have how to set up Unity 8 preview and Ubuntu 14.04. I want to warn you though, it is not meant for desktop use at this point.
Okay. Not a production thing.
No, it is. Okay. It is the mobile experience scaled up, and then they're going to start working from there. So
weird.
Don't get judgy, but if you just want to play, it's a no. That's not it.
That's not going to happen.
No, I see here.
Okay.
Listen, Yeah, I don't think it's going to.
Oh, at least we prefaced it with the fact that it's you know, it's a sandbox.
And you have to have Intel too. You have to have Intel
so
through and
Intel,
through.
like Intel graphics, that's the main thing. Intel chip, Intel graphics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No dice. Here, let me
No
try.
dice. Okay. Well, you know.
Here, I'm going to restart. We'll restart. I think part of it is because I had 2
Cool.
user sessions logged in.
That could do
And you can't have because
That makes sense,
It
'cause
has
then
to
you're
stop
tying it.
X and start mirror.
Makes
right?
sense.
So
Yeah, that sounds plausible to me.
yeah. All right. So and actually now we'll get to see in real time.
Mhm.
So it's booting up right now. It just got to Grub,
Okay.
and there we go. So Grub just passed, and you can see it boots up pretty damn fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now that I restarted, I've got Unity 8 selected. And I have no
Cool.
idea if it's even going to work with the camera. You know,
We'll find out.
mirroring.
Oh, whether it's even going to show up in the video or not.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to. Did it? No.
Well, what? Wait.
That's all we got.
Oh, okay.
That's all we get.
That's all we
so
get.
no dice for you. But
Nope.
if you're not hooked up to an HDMI output,
That'd be fun to play with.
you get to play around with Mirror. You get to play around with the Unity 8
And
applications.
start a thread on the subreddit and throw in some screenshots. You know, image your.
Yeah, you know
bad
what?
boy.
I'll play with it some more during the break too, and see
Right.
if I can get it. But I think every time I've tried it, I've had it. I had it mirrored actually before.
Did you really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
so-
just not loving you right now.
Yeah. It's
Could be.
anyways. We'll have a link from an Ubuntu developer. He wrote up on his blog post how you can get Unity 8 installed, how you get all the apps,
Nice.
and he gave you like a few extra PPAs to load up. And now, because of following his guide, I'm gonna have like continuously updated Unity 8 and test applications.
That's
so,
cool.
Oh, well, I'll get to watch these kinks get worked out.
That's very cool, and
Yeah.
you have an experience that you get to control.
Yeah. Yep. So very good.
Stuff.
There you have it. And download links and all of the other goodies, as well as additional resources, are all in the show notes for Ubuntu 14.04. We'd love to hear what you guys think. So go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click the contact link, and choose Linux. Or actually, do me a solid. Choose Linux Unplugged from the dropdown. We'll talk about this a little bit on Tuesday's Linux Unplugged.
Yeah.
You can also start a thread in our subreddit, linuxactionshow.reddit.com.
Good conversation.
Yes, we'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, Matt, that's the Linux Action Show's review of Ubuntu 14.04. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But
Right.
Matt,
Ish.
before we get out of here, I want to cover some emails. Actually, let's do a Reddit thread.
Yeah.
I thought this was a good question. It came in from Monster Cameron, and he says, "Why doesn't LAS review AMD hardware?" Yeah, he says their APUs are great and low-cost options for home theater PCs. They may not be as small as a Nook, but you're also able to find small, sleek MTX or micro ITX cases, all without paying the Intel tax. So, Matt, why don't we talk about AMD? Very
Okay.
much?
You want to go first? Do you want me to go?
I'll start. I
Okay,
mean,
go ahead. Yeah.
I think part of it is there's not. Okay, I'll back up a little bit. A lot of the stuff we review or deal with has either been sent to us by a company, like in the case of this Ultra Pro,
Yeah.
and this Bonobo here, or I buy it, and that is 90% of it is the stuff that I personally buy with my own personal money, and really, AMD just isn't doing anything that if I'm going to spend my money on is what I want to buy, and so there's nothing they make for me that I feel like buying, so therefore I buy the things I want, and one of the things that I want is Intel graphics and things like that, because I've been watching Intel work with the Linux kernel over a series of years now, and I feel like we are now sitting at the fruit of years of investment and labor
Exactly.
from Intel, working with the kernel, working with great video drivers, and now also on top of that, their GPU is actually getting competitive enough that this morning before we started the show, I'm playing video games on an Iris graphics processor. And it's
demanding video
blowing
games.
my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, there's an excitement from that standpoint for Intel. There's the products that AMD currently makes don't particularly interest me.
Right.
There's the fact that Intel has doubled down on their Linux support, which pushes me in that direction. And then when you go outside of Intel, I prefer NVIDIA for my graphics cards.
Yes.
I feel like also NVIDIA has a better track record of a better graphics that they make. I use the proprietary driver. If I was using the open source driver, I might be more inclined to go AMD. I don't know.
I can actually comment on that. I have both. For open source, AMD definitely has the better driver, hands down. For closed source, oh my God, there's not even a contest there. NVIDIA nukes them and paved right over them. Going back to the whole AMD thing, I haven't used an AMD desktop chip since like Athlon XP or something.
Yeah.
It was like ancient.
Yeah.
Been burned badly with their mobile stuff. That was just hideous. So, from a desktop point of view, to date, yeah, I think they probably make very good desktop chips. Certainly, I think they're worth experiencing. But at the end of the day, I know that with Intel stuff, and I'm talking about not their processors, but I'm talking about their graphics and their Wi-Fi and their networking, I'm more of a fan of that space. And so it's just easier to have a unified experience overall. AMD feels a little too hit and miss. I hate what they do with graphics. And so, you know, I can't get a lot of love there, but their CPUs are fine. I have no problem with them. Go for it. If that's your bag,
it is
whatever.
It is part of that complete package. Like you look at the NUC we reviewed last week, that is a box of Intel. But everything just works, and it works really well. It's very stable, and so there's a little sysadmin in me that that appreciates that aspect of the Intel chipset. You know, the number one argument the chat room has, and really in this thread in our subreddit, and even in the opening question, is people come back to, well, they're cheap, and what you get for what you pay is better than what you get for what you pay for Intel. Okay.
And now if I'm building a gaming rig, a desktop gaming rig, I could absolutely see me investing in a better hard drive, better graphics card, and just to an AMD chip.
I mean, I'm not,
go for it.
Like, here's the thing. I'm not Scrooge McDuck swimming in my money bin rich. I'm not well off. But at the same time, if I'm going to spend my hard-earned money on hardware, I don't buy cheap stuff. I never, ever, in fact, I sometimes will, I avoid cheap stuff. I don't have time for cheap stuff. I don't want cheap stuff. So when people tell me, well, AMDs are cheap, you are not swaying my decision at all. And so what I always find interesting is people come at us with this question a lot. It is always from the standpoint of price. And I appreciate that there's just folks that, for me, if I can't buy it good, if I can't buy something nice, something the quality I want, I just do not buy. I will make do with what I have for a year or two longer than I should if it means I wait and save up my money and then buy a good piece of hardware that might be slightly more money. And even if that slightly better is just in my perception of it, or in one particular use case that I happen to have, to me, it is worth it.
And I've had a couple failures with AMD chips too. For one thing, they're, as someone pointed out in the chat room, they're power hogs. They are. You know, desktop or mobile does not matter. And that's fine. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of with Chris in this, in that I'm by no means in a position to buy new anything. But if I was, it would probably not be because I don't build computers anymore.
Well, you're actually you've been holding back, waiting to buy a video card for a couple of months
now.
An
NVIDIA one.
And you're willing to wait so you can get the one you want instead of going cheaper and sort of compromising in a way that you're not willing to compromise.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could go for some lower end NVIDIA card and probably limp along with lower settings.
Or some cheaper ATI card.
Yeah, or a cheaper ATI card, which I would sooner play in traffic than buy. I hate ATI cards. I absolutely loathe them to death.
Unless you're mining Bitcoins.
Unless you're mining Bitcoins and unless you're rendering Windows. But just putting that out there. But yeah, for me, it's just no question. So for AMD, I support the idea behind the company. I support the underdogness of it because I'm a big underdog guy.
Yeah.
And I even support them if you want to do that, accepting the fact that you're taking a little bit of a power consumption hit. You want to build your own PC, go for it. But if you're buying one, no, really, no, not so much.
And I think what's cool about the way software, the open source drivers are being developed right now, and the pace of which is all being developed.
Yeah,
these positions could be like totally invalid in a year, right? And I would change my tune. Like if all of a sudden ATI
and my power gripes are based on old knowledge. Now there could be bleeding edge stuff out there that's addressed that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like if ATI, like we recently covered a story about ATI sort of working with the open source driver so that all of the code that touches the kernel is free, and they would just have proprietary code in the user space, and it sounds like a very interesting model, and like those things could play out, and all of a sudden ATI could become the top tier vendor, or AMD could become the top tier vendor for Linux hardware.
That's right.
And I would change my tune, but for right now, I wait and I buy NVIDIA and Intel for the most part, and I'm pretty happy with that. I don't really have a reason to change.
Yeah. Doesn't make them perfect, but they're pretty good.
All right, so here we are today doing our first broadcast from JB1, and we are still not as cool as this video you're about to see. This, Matt, you'll never guess what exists in virtual cyberspace.
I can only imagine.
If you have an Oculus Rift.
No.
The last room.
And welcome to the Linux
Oh my God, that is off the chain.
5. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Well, good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning.
Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
Oh
and
my God.
news as well. But first, Matt,
Yes.
it's our picks.
How cool is
All right, so why don't we
That's
start
wild.
With the Runs Linux? This is
So
an
you got to
awesome
have an
Linux.
Oculus Rift, and you got to have this Firefox 3D browser, But I just like
That's so awesome.
So it's official. Linux Action Show exists in cyberspace, virtual reality. I for one welcome our VR overlords and can't wait to start doing more live shows from virtual reality.
That is crazy town. That is absolutely
wow. That's pretty neat. All right, Matt. Well, you got a new article over at datamation.com, don't you?
Touched a little bit on why I switched to GNOME and what, the things I like about it. Just comparing it to other desktops and whatnot, and just kind of sharing my experiences with it. So you should check it out.
Nice.
Datamation.com. Scroll to open source, and you'll find the option there as why I switched to GNOME.
He might have spent a little time in XFCE, but
just
he landed
a little bit.
He landed in GNOME.
Yes.
But when you're not writing articles, sometimes you're playing a little video games.
I do play some video games. We, my nephew and I.
You jump.
I'm stabbing.
Yeah, what you do is...
Oh shit, that's a mine.
You are severely bad at this. You press...
This is me playing the game, by the way.
Yeah, I guess when he said you're severely bad at this.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, he's the gamer, I'm the geek. And, God, I'm horrible. And usually he's playing the game. So we thought we'd do a Matt's play in this particular episode, and it actually turned out to be rather humorous. And so I put in some effort into the graphics art for the thumbnail and even redid the intro a little bit. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, well, the intro has a little more flashbang.
Let's see. I'm going to go look.
Let's
check
that out.
Why? Nope, not. Okay, so there, we have these linked in the show notes in the What's Matt Doing section.
Hey, look, I'm some...
All right, so I'll scoot back here to the... It's not. It's being very YouTube about it. It won't let me. It's giving me an X. What's going on with that? Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. Let's see. And now oh, yeah.
So you got the traditional intro. Wait for it.
Hey, it's Geek and the Gamer, and today
so I figured that
you got a robot dinosaur. That
I had a robot.
fire?
Well, my nephew was like, we need more guns and explosions and dinosaurs. I was like, I got you covered.
You did all one.
I did it all in one big thing. So I was like, it's an over the top game, and we needed an over top intro.
Yeah. All right. Well, join us on Tuesday if you want more Linux. We'll do Linux Unplugged Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific. You can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get that in your local time zone. Maybe we'll talk about client-side decoration hoopla and the goods, the bads, and what it's going to mean for your future desktop and why your future desktop might look a little dorky for a while. Maybe.
It's a debate.
We might talk about something else completely different because it is an unplugged show. That's why it's called Linux Unplugged. You see how that?
Yeah, I see what you did there.
All right, Matt. Well, I just want to leave people with just a last couple of bits of wisdom. Number one, we want to hear your feedback. linuxactionshow.reddit.com or click the contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. Choose Linux Action Show from the drop-down. And then our highly trained monkeys will make sure that when you choose Linux Action Show, it gets delivered to the correct inbox, or else I will tase them. And you can also join us live over at jblive.tv on Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Right.
Or jblive.info if you want the audio stream. And jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar has all of that in your local time.
That's
automatically.
Right. Yes.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here from Linux Fest Northwest next week. Pain. Where am I gonna find really awesome? You know what I need is big old cushy bar stools. There you go, Matt. Here I am. I'm in Unity 8.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
I'm in Unity 8.
Nice.
But you can see, like, when I launch Chrome, like, it doesn't come up. Like, it's still... And I have to drag from the edges because I'm using a mouse.
Oh, yeah. So it feels totally janky and weird.
It's not exactly... Not exactly meant for... And you got your apps in your scope, so I could do... here's my videos.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
Definitely not a desktop situation, but it gives you an idea of how these apps would work on the phone. Just in a...
Yeah, and if I'm doing development for these, that's
and if you're thinking tablets too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that could actually, outside of the touch part of it, give you kind of a thingamajig.
Yeah, you can see it's a little, it's not quite ready, but they'll tell you as much. You shouldn't be using it for anything other than just playing with it.
True.
So you got to use.
Tell me.
You got to. So there you go. Did you see? I just swiped between applications.
Weird.
So I'm swiping between apps now.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it does the job.
So from a developer point of view, it's kind of handy to have not have to do some weird thingamajigger.
Now I'm all lost.
I'm looking at you, Android.
Now I'm all lost. Okay, there we go. So I can't seem to figure out, like, here's weather. Right. Oh, here's more apps. There's a browser. There it is.
Oh, weird.
All right, so here's our web browser.
Oh, crazy town.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So how do I... Whoa.
Weird. Okay.
Didn't mean to do that.
How
do I...
Things are happening.
See. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
Dock it.
Oh, jeez. I want to go back. Okay, web browser. Oh jeez. Oh jeez. What's going on? I think I snapped notes to the side somehow. All right, web browser. Nope. Well.
Well, it's a phone. It's a phone interface
There you go.
on a computer. So
There you go.
know, what are you gonna do?
All right, now how the heck do I? Oh yeah, this is cool too.
Oh, weird.
So you can see I got a little pull down menu over here.
Nice.
Anybody know how you log out?
Yeah, it does feel very Windows Phone. It does kind of have elements of that. It feels like
Yeah, I can see that.
a little Windows Phone action. Well, at least with the fonts, I think is what it is. Layout.
Log out. There it is. Look, I found it. I found it. I figured out how to log out.
Mm-hmm.
I did it, Matt. I did it.
Yay, you logged out.
Wait, no, I didn't.
Well, I think that Ubuntu feels like it's trying to target more the Windows Phone audience as far as like the big fonts. I can't get lost. The feeling to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of those are like
the new converts.
I feel like some of the best stuff in Windows 8 UI is stuff they watched other platforms do. And be like, we should take that. We should take that. We should take that. And so it's not necessarily. I mean, you can't look at that and figure that's what the end product's gonna be like either. Because they're going to take those and they're going to have some smarts to figure out
exactly.
You know, but we weren't just showing the desktop apps. That was also running on Mir. That was I was just using Mir
that's
too.
interesting. So there it is. Monkey suit.
Woo! It's getting hot in here. Take off all your clothes. Matt is getting so hot up in this business.